A lot of people ask me, Joe, can you actually make restaurant quality barbecue at home? Like, what's the secret? And my answer always, there really is no secret. It's just technique. But I lied. There is one secret. The secret to making good barbecue is you have to start your fires with a Korean newspaper. If you're not using Korean newspaper, it's just not going to taste the same. All right, guys, just real quick, for this fire, we're probably maintaining this temp for at about, I don't know, 250, 275, give or take. So there is no real specific temp, especially with these smaller backyard pits. 250 isn't quite 250, 275 isn't quite 275 on larger smokers. I talked about it before, so don't stress about too much about the temp. Just have it in a range that's between 250 and 275. But again, with these backyard pits, because the firebox itself is not that large, and if you are trying to cook with mostly wood and trying to reduce the amount of coals that you're using, then you gotta let this thing burn for a while. Right now, this thing has been burning with that chimney, and I threw, I think, 4 logs in there earlier, and this thing's been burning for about 2 hours or so. So while I was doing all the prep, getting things ready, before I even shot the first thing, other than the chimney itself, like, this thing has been rocking and rolling, and now we got some good coals in here, so now we can start putting in splits and have it just be a regular, or like a regular run fire. Okay, so I'll zoom into it a little bit closer, but a lot of this stuff is a lot chunkier now, and it's kind of like that coal that maybe you're used to seeing lump charcoal and stuff like that, but that's what we're looking for. So we're gonna break it up, have some chunks that are lifting a little bit to kind of elevate those fresh logs that we put on top of there, but for the most part, I like keeping my fire nice and chunky. I'll show later on, probably my smokestack isn't as clean as most people would like it to be, but I really don't necessarily care that it's a super clean fire. Be just more so worried about that this fire doesn't die, and also that it doesn't look like I'm billowing out smoke. But other than that, nice and simple. Again, don't break it up too much. And just a quick tip, if you are getting enough coals in your now and you're gonna put a new log in there, take your shovel and just kind of create an alley in the middle right here. Just move them side to side. Make sure the coals aren't always pushed back all the way to the back end either. If they do, you're just not going to get enough even spread of your coals. So spread them out, kind of create like a little river or a canal in between, so that way when you put in a fresh log, it'll be elevated with the coals on the sides, and then it'll have a nice kind of lane where the air can flow through. All right, and again, if you push all your coals to the back end, the lane that you create that goes all the to the end will get blocked off. So make sure that you're not always shoving coal, ash, and everything like that to the back end, because then it's going to end up just killing your fire. Now this log is fairly large for this type of firebox itself. Like, it's a thick piece, but again, as long as we can maintain this fire, get good coals, we can still burn big splits like this. Again, it's not going to burn as clean, but I'm not going to spend all this time splitting all these things up by cutting in half and then taking an axe and putting it into little splits, because this will last me a lot longer than me throwing a bunch of small splits, because then I'll have to come in here every 20 minutes or so refueling this firebox. Well, instead I can just throw this chunk in there and just have it go for 45 minutes. So here we go. And obviously it's going to be a little bit smokier as it starts to light, but eventually it'll get going, and we'll be perfectly fine. So another question that I get asked, pretty often too, is like, is there a difference between cooking with your firebox or open or closed? It all kind of depends on more than your pit design. I think it has more to do with the wood that you're using. And the reason why I say that is, like, depending on the type of wood that you got, sometimes it needs more air or less air to kind of really get it going. So if you are dealing with a lot of super dry wood, one thing that I would recommend is closing your door a little bit more, just because as you're cooking, that wood is really burning pretty hot anyway. But if you, it's kind of like, you know, you have a pile of kindling and you blow on it, it starts getting hot really fast. And so you know, if you are using that type of wood, it's probably best to reduce that airflow by closing down that firebox door a little bit so it's not getting so much. If you are using wood that's a little bit thicker, a little more green, that might need more oxygen, then you would probably need to keep that door more open, just because it needs more air. And if you restrict it, you're going to start to see a lot of smoke coming out of your firebox. Because my fire right now is I'm putting those big logs in there, just because, you know, I'm too lazy to split them. I'm probably, until they start breaking down a little bit, I'll leave the door open, just so it's burning properly. But as it gets closer and closer to it breaking down or becoming chunks, then I can start slowly closing my door down, because I know it doesn't need all that air to kind of burn more evenly. So just kind of keeping that stuff in mind is really important too, because you don't want to always just think like, well, I'm used to, you know, I'm just always used to cooking with the door closed. But now if you get a new batch of wood that's a little bit greener and it's just not reacting the same way that you expect it to, you're going to be fighting that fire all day long, because you're going to be trying to toss and turn that log inside the firebox and then closing door down, and then it chokes off again, and you know, same thing happens. And again, if you are used to keeping the firebox door open and you get a drier batch of wood, and if you are dealing with that, let's say you're used to dealing with the greener stuff, you throw a lot of that drier stuff in there, you keep the door wide open, and you just kind of like, everything has a way darker color really early, it's a little bit drier, the texture is a little bit tighter on all your meat. So you know, fire management in that sense is just more so like feeling the log, seeing where you think it is, and that'll kind of help you dictate, you know, firebox door open or closed. It is a little bit different with, you know, with the larger 500 or 1,000 gallon compared to these pits. These things can run really efficiently once you kind of get that temperature even and where you want it to be, and you don't have to, you know, feed it as much. But if you don't know, you know, what type of logs to use in certain stages on any smoker, right, you're just fighting the entire time. So just be careful about, same thing like when we were talking about placing meats on a smoker, placement of wood, choosing wood, door open and close is huge. Playing with that stack also, right now it's open, because, you know, we want, like I said, you know, with these thicker logs, we want as much air flowing through that thing as much as possible. But, you know, there are times maybe towards the end of a cook where you want to slow it down. Sometimes I just do it out of habit, like closing down that smokestack, but you don't have to. And some smokers don't even have a smokestack where you can close down. I use the stack in the door more so to make sure the air is flowing properly. You know, the airflow is going to be a thing that really dictates flavor profile of your smoke, and also like even temperatures throughout. You don't want to be controlling your temperature just by opening and closing that stack. If you do that, your fire inside the firebox is going to get really dirty smoke at times. Other times it's going to burn too hot. A lot of people will kind of like put markers on their smokestack and a little damper on the smokestack and saying like, this marker exactly is where I need it to be to hit 250, and if I open it a little bit this way, it's going to be 275. It doesn't really work like that. It'll change all the time based off of what's going inside of here. All of it kind of comes together and works together to change things. Your wood that you put in here is going to change the way that that stack reacts, or how you should react to it. So this is also my preferred method of like placing the wood inside the smoker. You know, it's kind of like this Z shape we got here, and the reason why I like doing this is because sometimes the logs in the bottom, those two, they don't really have enough to kind of keep it going. You know, as the air kind of carries through, you're hoping that heat from that front log right here will kind of push and kind of burn that back log. Sometimes it doesn't happen, so the reason why I like keeping this log on top is because as that catches, it'll help to kind of surround more heat around that backlog, and it'll kind of keep it just flowing. The reason why I like turning it, so sometimes you'll see in most cases, like someone will just put it right down the middle like that. I'm not saying I haven't done it this way before, and and that I never do it. But the one thing that I don't like about the placement of this is that this log that you have in the middle, you can kind of see how the fire is now kind of closing in and gapping on that middle log right there. So what's happening is now, especially if you're having problems with the front end of your smoker being really hot, like where the exchange is, everything just kind of funnels in here and shoots up that middle log. And when you turn it sideways, you allow it to kind of like change the way that fire is moving across the firebox. It kind of changes the direction a little bit. It slows down the airflow, or just kind of gives it a little bit of a buffer. And so now it's kind of having to like weave in between different areas. And also the thing that I like about this method is, if you look in the bottom corner right there, that log is helping kind of keep this right area hot. And then if we look at the top of that log over there in this top corner, that corner right there is helping those ends stay hot. If you just put the log in the middle, a lot of the heat just tends to kind of push in the middle, and sometimes your fire gets a little bit smoky because, you know, those ends aren't really they're not getting enough attention, I want to say, from all that heat, because everything is kind of getting like closed in on that middle log. So I don't know if that makes sense. You know, that's the way I like to think about it. It just kind of helps like distribute that flame a little bit more by putting that log sideways instead of right down the middle. Alright, temp wise, we're doing pretty good. Or again, like I said, we're about 250, 275. I expect this thing to rise a little bit more, and you know what, honestly, if it goes up to 285, 300, whatever, dude, I'm not gonna freak out, guys. Like, if anything, it'll just make our cook go a little bit faster. So nothing wrong with that, and I'm sure you guys can even see that even me, just during the time that I'm talking, it's slowly creeping up. And yeah, man, that's it. We're gonna have fun with this and let this rock and roll. I was talking to someone the other day, you know, I realized that, you know, my last 3 years or so, I've cooked on 20 different pits, and, you know, majority of them were built by, like, you know, I would say probably built by like 2 or 3 guys, most of them. But even though majority of those pits were built by one specific person, every single pit still had its own little quirk to it. You know, like there are certain ones where we had to build a bigger fire. There are other ones where we had to push the wood a little bit further into the firebox so that it would pull. If we didn't push it back, you know, 3 inches further back into the firebox, it would just never pull properly, and we'd have to build like a bonfire inside the firebox just for it to start to kind of carry something through. There are other pits where we close the stack like almost all the way, and then there are other pits where we had to leave the stack wide open. So there is no like one design, one pit that works best, because even within the realm of one person building one pit the same exact way, every single pit's going to be different. No matter how often anyone says like, oh yeah, this model, our design, it is perfect for this condition, it's always going to be the same, I don't buy that at all, because every single pit that I've cooked on has been different. And you know, that's why, like, sometimes even though you have 5,000 gallon pits, like, oh, this is the best beef rib one, this is the best brisket pit, this is the best pork rib pit, you know, everyone has their favorites. So don't feel like, you know, you're not doing something right if you're following someone else's instructions, because you're gonna have to find out, you know, what works best for you and your style of cooking on a specific pit. So that's pretty much it, guys. I mean, when you're running fires and doing the fire management in your backyard, obviously it is a little bit, it has its challenges, again, mainly having to do with the size of the firebox itself. But for the most part, I mean, that's all you're really playing around with, is just like making sure you maintain a good coal bed, making sure you know, you're moving and positioning those wood pieces in a way that's, you know, gonna last longer. You don't want to have to continue to, go outside and to refeed your fire, like, every 20 minutes or so. And also, you also don't want to have to go inside and poke at the fire every 20 minutes either. So it's really just being about knowing, for me, at least in the backyard, it's like playing around with the firebox door more than the stack itself. Most of my fire or the temp control, smoke control, all that kind of stuff has to do with this is the positioning of the wood, and also playing around with the door. If you have those two things down, like, for the most part, you'll be okay. Obviously, there are certain times when the pieces are just way too big and you can't use those splits in these pits. Other than that, for the most part, if you go to a wood guy, just see if they can get you small to medium splits, and that'll help you a lot in the long run. Just wanted to do just a brief video about managing fires in like a backyard style pit. And then later on, once I get back out to cooking more on my 1,000-gallon, we'll be able to talk about a little bit more stuff. It'll be a lot of kind of recap of what we just talked about today, but I think I'll be able to show a couple more things about how your fires are going to be a little bit different, because you can maintain a larger fire, larger coal bed. I think on a larger pit, airflow is definitely more important in those pits, so the stack is more important on those type of designs. So we'll get into that kind of conversation later on. So hopefully this helped. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you like, subscribe, share this video with your friends, and if you have any other questions that you want me to answer in a later fire management video, just leave your questions in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.